With several teams heading in to the Week 14 action with their playoff lives in the balance, those teams had to execute to the highest level, even if they were facing one of the top teams in the entire league. We saw some teams perform exceptionally well despite the odds. One team had 3 million reasons why they had to perform at a top level. Want to find out who they were? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dutch! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! Are you kidding me? You're driving me nuts!
But behold,
Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all for joining us for another edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Of course, you gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo here. And this weekend, I hope you, first things first, I hope you guys are doing great. Doing awesome myself. I hope you guys are still, or have gotten out of the whim. I know it's been 9 plus days since Thanksgiving, but hey, listen, some of us are still getting out of the groove of the sweet potato and the cranberry sauce and all of that good stuff. But the NFL has continued on, and so should we. But it started Thursday night with the 34-31 victory by the Lions, whom were carrying a spot in the entire NFL, and the Packers, arguably one of the hottest teams in the NFL, trying to continue their mount to the top of the NFC North. But this was a game that I was disappointed in. And as I said on a couple of my other shows, I'm really sick of watching officials be the cause of an outcome in a game. And ultimately, there was a play at the end of this game that would have gave the Packers a touchdown. And yeah, I didn't like that. I think this OPI is in the eyes of the beholder, and it needs to become more and more written in stone. It shouldn't be in the eyes of the official. It shouldn't be that way. That's just how I feel. There are certain things that are OPI, and to me, that was not OPI. It looked like the guy was trying to go, the player was trying to go into his route, and he just collided with him. It didn't look like it was blatant. So, like I said, it needs to be more cut and dried than it is. It shouldn't just be a judgment call. I mean, because you have some routes that are deliberately set to run that way. That's just the way it is. The teams need to stop running man coverage if they see it. It's not the player's fault. That's just the way I see it. All right. As I said, let's look at the tail of the tape. Because as I said, to me, the Packers were the better team that night. And they picked a perfect play. And it should have never been called OPI. But the game was very good nonetheless. Jared Goff was 32 of 41, 283, 3 touchdowns, was sacked only once. David Montgomery had 51 yards on the ground. Sonic and Knuckles had a very uneventful night, other than Knuckles had a touchdown, whom is David Montgomery. My son would be ecstatic at these analogies that we're using. But Jordan Love had an uneventful evening. He was 12 of 20, 206 yards and a touchdown. And quietly, Josh Jacobs had a monstrous game. 18 for 66, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, Christian Watson, 4 for 114. The only receiver in this game to top 100 yards. Now, a lot of people would say, well, what is your biggest objection to what happened last night? As I said, you can call rub plays. I think that the issue is when you have a guy engaging you, much like I saw in that Texas-Georgia game. If there's a defender that's engaging you, OPI goes out the window. I'm sorry, it goes out the window because regardless of what people think, that guy's going to run his route. And if you got a guy engaging you, he's impeding you running that route. So in essence, he could be pushing you right where you want to go. So I'm a firm believer that you got to use a little bit of intelligence if you're a defensive back. You take OPI out the game if they're pushing you into another defender. That's on you. You got to let up. But overall, this was a game, when you look at the statistics of this game, like as I said, you really didn't see that very much. The statistics really didn't show you what was really the catalyst for this game going the way it went. And you look at it, the Lions had 27 first downs to the Packers 17. And then you look at the total number of plays. The Lions had 76 run plays to the 45 of the Green Bay Packers. And the Lions, once again, with their well-balanced offense, they had 111 yards rushing in this game and 280 throwing the ball. But then you look at the Packers, and they were just as balanced, 199 to 99. So, but it was the time of possession, which is something that does not get talked about a lot when you think Lions. When you think high-powered offense, you don't think a whole lot of time coming off the clock. But ultimately, that's what the Lions did. And I mean, they won by a large margin. We're talking about 13 minutes, 36 to 23. And yeah, this was one where you have to really tip your hat to the Lions. And as I said before, I was not a fan of that OPI that would have gave the Packers the lead. But when you watch this game, you say to yourself, how did we have so many points scored in this game? But to me, it was just an entertaining game. You know, you had penalties in it, and needless to say, these teams took care of business when they got inside the red zone, as both teams were 4 out of 5 when they got inside the red zone, which is what you want to see. And I wish we could see this game again. Maybe Packers get in the playoffs and we're able to see it. But Lions 34, Packers 31, as the Lions go to 12-1, running away with the NFC North and the number 1 seed in the NFC. Packers fall to 9-4, but not far behind. Jaguars 10, Titans 6. Now, this was a game I can't even really sit here and tell you that I actually watched in totality or watched it in its entirety, because I flipped and flipped and flipped, and looking at this game and even looking at statistics, it was kind of one of those games where it's like you kind of want to forget it. But it was basically a game of futility. Once again, you're looking at two teams that are playing for the bottom part of the AFC South. Once again, it was backup quarterback Mac Jones filling in for injured quarterback Trevor Lawrence. And then you see Will Levis coming in trying to do what he did. But, looking at this game in its totality, it's really something to desire. When you look at Tennessee, knowing that they want to keep Will Levis's throws down, Tony Pollard carried that thing 21 times for 102 yards. But unfortunately, Levis was only 19 of 32. Now, he wasn't sacked nearly as much. But the reality of it is when you are not handling your business and getting points when you should be getting points. And what I'm referring to is when you get inside the red zone and you come away with nothing. Twice they were in the red zone, they came away with 0. When you come away with 0, you end up with the L. Not L Duncan. But you look at the time of possessions equal. Jacksonville turned this thing over twice, y'all. They did not rush Tennessee. They outpassed them. But the thing that kills you as a head coach is when you do everything right and it still is not enough. To me, this was the simple case of you have to turn opportunities into points. And this has been the story for the Titans all season. They haven't been able to cash in the red zone. And Jacksonville was able to cash in on one opportunity, which was one more than the Titans did. And what happens when we see that, guys? You get wins. You get the dub. Nothing really impressive about this game. We look at the formula for the upset, which is not much of an upset. It's just a case of one team has one more win than the other. And the Titans were just not able to get it done. It was just a classic case of this is an ugly game. I mean, the Titans came out the door. They hit a field goal, and then Jacksonville turns the ball over. And Tennessee's unable to do anything about it. Tennessee goes for it inside the Jacksonville 5. They're not able to get it. Jacksonville once again turns the ball over, and that's the end of the half. So they were up 3-0 and had opportunities to take this thing out. They take the points. Guess what? It's 10-9, even though people are going to say, well, you would have still lost by a point. I agree. Tennessee's really got nothing to lose when you start talking about winning a game and you're not kicking field goals and then you're not getting it inside the red zone. You know, that's a big no-no here. And, of course, Tennessee had another turnover on down, so it's a classic case of Jaguars 10, Titans 6, as both teams are now 3-10 and well out of the playoff race in the division. And we've got the Dolphins 32, Jets 26. Now, this is the football team and the Dolphins who are scratching their way back into this playoff race, and they're creeping their way back in quietly because this was a team that everybody said everything from the word, but they were dead. And the Jets tried to send them home. Yeah, they were trying to send the Dolphins home. They literally were trying to send this team home. And needless to say, they arguably should have been home. Aaron Rodgers was 27 of 39, 339. I get it. A lot of people are going to say this defense has to play better. But it was a classic shootout. This was a game where you had HN had 24 yards rushing. Braylon Allen only had 43. And it was a duel between Aaron and Tua. And on the scoreboard, Tua got the better end of the deal. He was 33 of 47, 331, 2 touchdowns. A-Rod, 27 of 39, 339. Tyreek Hill had finally had one of those breakout games that many of you guys would be looking for. 10 for 115 and a score. Jalen Waddle, 9 for 99. And it's looking more and more like Tua's getting back to that level he was at before he got the concussion. On the other hand, Garrett Wilson had a monster game against Jalen Ramsey, which was the talk of this week as far as player for player. 7 grabs, 114. Huge game for any of you guys that had him in fantasy. That's what you want to see. Devontae Adams, 9 grabs, 109 yards, and a touchdown. But really, it was the battle of the duos until Jonnu Smith showed up to the party late in the overtime period. He had no grabs going into the overtime period. And then all of a sudden, when we get to the overtime, he has 3 catches, including the game-winning touchdown. 3 grabs, 44 yards, and the score. Ultimately, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, this would be a moment where Aaron Rodgers and company would have been able to use that extra guy. But once again, the Jets looking out of sorts, not looking like a Aaron Rodgers-led football team, looking like a hot mess. And unfortunately, as we said, when most 3-10 teams look like 3-10 teams. But on some footnotes, Jordan Brooks picked up a sack on the night. Jamie and Sherwood had 18 tackles. That's a lot of tackles, you guys. The Dolphins had 3 sacks of Aaron Rodgers. Zach Sealer had 2 of those sacks. But once again, the New York Jets fall to 3-10. The Dolphins keep their slim but realistic playoff hopes alive. The homecoming game, as Kirk Cousins returned home to Minneapolis to face the Vikings. He was not successful in his return, as the Vikings were able to pull out a 42-21 victory as his slump continues. Kirk Cousins has really been struggling here lately. I think he's got 8 interceptions in the last 3 games. Look, this is a situation where the Falcons are playing for the playoffs. A lot of people are going to say, do you put Penix in there? No, you don't. You do not put Penix in there, and I will tell you why. You don't put Penix in there because guess what? He was the one that got you here. And he being Cousins. Cousins is a guy that gets into hot streaks because here's the reality. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to need him for the playoffs. You're not going to want to send Penix in there in the playoffs. But he finished 23 of 37, 344, 2 interceptions, and a sack. Meanwhile, the guy who was his, I guess you could say his heir to the throne, Sam Darnold was 22 of 28, 347, 5 touchdowns, and 4 sacks. But before we get into this, guys, something interesting is going to happen. I believe Sam Darnold's on a 1-year deal. There's going to be a lot of names calling for this dude in free agency. I'm going to be honest with you. Sam Darnold's a young guy. As much as I would like to say, let him go bye-byes, I would think that Minnesota would kind of, now I'm just putting this out there, have the Vikings finally landed on their guy because Sam Darnold is 27 years old. You don't know what you got in J.J. McCarthy, but all of a sudden now you know what you got in Sam Darnold. A guy who's thrown for right at 3,300 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 scores. And now he's finally figured it out. Want to know what I mean, figured it out? Let's talk about it. Aaron Jones had 13 carries for 73 yards. That's impressive. When you got a quarterback that's throwing the ball so well, the running game is now a secondary weapon, and it works when you use it. Then you look at, this is probably my favorite part of this, before the last 3 weeks. With the last 3 weeks, I don't believe Justin Jefferson had caught a touchdown pass. If I recall correctly, he hadn't caught a touchdown pass since, I think they said October. But let's look at it from this point of view. You got a guy like Jordan Addison who is now lighting it up. 8 catches, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a heck of a fantasy. That's all I'm going to say. Justin Jefferson, 7 grabs, 132, 2 touchdowns. TJ Hoskinson, 4 for 5. Now, he had a big game last week. The reason why I said that the Minnesota Vikings have found what they've been looking for, you're finally getting that young guy involved. Jordan Addison was a straight baller last season. He's 22 years old. He's doing something that even Kirk wasn't doing when Justin Jefferson was on the field. He's getting 2 superstars and a tight end involved in the passing game. Boy, these Vikings going to be tough to beat, y'all. Especially now that Sam's got that rapport with Jordan Addison and he's working on the one with TJ. I can't wait to see this Detroit rematch. I am just begging to see this. And honestly, Atlanta had no answer for it. And I want to give an idea about what Shannon said. Vikings shouldn't pay Sam Darnold. Don't listen to that knucklehead. This is the same clown that thinks LeBron's better than Jordan.
What? What the?
Hey, you pay Sam Darnold. Don't listen to this knucklehead. He done dropped too many dumbbells on his head. I don't care who tells. That's the guy that should get paid. Because he wasn't bad in Charlotte. He was not. He was not. Minnesota, don't make a mistake. Go ahead and wrap that man up. You give it to him right now. But you got 2 matchups. Oh, my goodness. And, guys, we got 2 more weeks for it. 2 more weeks. Now, they got Chicago next week on Monday night. Now, here's the true blue reality in this right now. They're going to have a chance to put themselves back in the division. Now, granted, they're going to need to get maybe a little bit of help. I don't know who holds the tiebreaker right now, but I'm going to tell you, if they can knock off Green Bay and then turn around and knock off Detroit, yeah, don't listen to Shannon Sharp. Go ahead and pay the man. Go ahead and pay the man. Now, I know we spent a lot of time over here talking about the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold, but what's happening in Atlanta? Atlanta is losing the NFC South. They're going to have to get it figured out. Because the truth of the matter is that if they don't get this thing figured out, it's going to end up being a situation where they've spent all of that money on Kirk Cousins, that this is going to end up being a situation where you're going to have to start Penix and then eat that deal that you gave him. Not what you want to do. Darnell Mooney is his favorite target, as we can tell. It was 6 grabs, 142 yards. Ray McLeod, 8 for 98. Drake London, 5 for 70. And once again, Kyle Pitts is nowhere to be seen, although he had 6 targets. It kills you because you've got a talent in Kyle Pitts, which I will be waiting for you to get rid of him. I will be waiting for you to drop him as a free agent, Atlanta. And being able to get pressure is huge as well. They got 4 sacks on Sam Darnold, but the problem is Cousins ain't got an excuse. He only got sacked once. Only got sacked once. Vikings go to 11-2. And the Falcons fall 6-7. As they look for answers with Kirk Cousins. And Raheem Morris has already said that they are sticking with Kirk. He is their guy. And that's that. So I'm not going to go there. If he's not willing to go there, I'm not going to. Josh Metellus and Byron Murphy added interceptions for the Minnesota Vikings. Saints 14, Giants 11. Now, it's already been a foregone conclusion that the New York Giants are trying to secure the number 1 pick in the draft. Well, you wouldn't know it looking at this game. You've got the Saints, who are 5-8 and trying to hold on to their slim hopes of the playoffs by winning the NFC South. Finding out that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to pull off a victory against the Raiders. They knew they had to win. So, was not an impressive game. Drew Lock had a decent game. He threw a pick and was sacked twice. Not much going. He stayed on top of Malik Neighbors, had 5 grabs on the day. Then you have Derek Carr giving his best impersonation of Superman, and ends up getting a concussion and an injury to his hand late in this game. And ultimately, it resulted in a missed field goal right there at the end of regulation. Carr is day-to-day. He's 20 for 31, 219, 1 touchdown, an interception. Alvin Kamara had 44 yards on the ground. Nothing statistical really sticks out. You know, this was just one of those games that was on the schedule. You play it, and to see what's going on, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, the 2 star edge rushers for the New York Giants, both had sacks apiece. I do want to talk about these 2 guys, being that Brian Burns now has secured his 7th sack of the season. Meanwhile, his edge mate, Kayvon Thibodeau, only picks up his 3rd sack of the season, being that he has not played as much this season. It's going to be interesting to see these 2 guys on the field for a full season. maybe next season. But as of right now, if it were me, I would have to beg these guys to sit down. This, right now, we're going for that number 1 pick. And as I said, the run game was not efficient. Both defenses were not giving up much, but I think a lot of that was because of how poor the offenses were. And ultimately, you see Demario Davis had a great interception that pretty much locked it all up. Trey Hawkins, the third, had an interception. But outside of that was really nothing to talk about. There was the Kendry Miller touchdown and the Tyron Tracy touchdown that he had. But a side note, Drew Lock did have 59 yards rushing. So there's a minor plus to that. But I already know that's not going to deem Drew Lock enough to lock in a starting position for next season. We all know that the New York Giants are more than likely going quarterback. But looking at the overall play here, you had 18-16 in the first down. And, of course, you had each team having a turnover, as well as the Saints winning the turnover battle. The Saints scoring both times in the red zone. Giants only converting 1 of 3, which is a story. It's kind of the definition or the defining moments of what we're dealing with the New York Giants, not being able to finish drives efficiently and being able to take advantage of opportunities when they get inside the red zone. And the $3 million game. The Panthers and Eagles had the Eagles had 3 million reasons why they had to win this game, and the Panthers had 3 million reasons why they needed to win this game. Eagles 22, Panthers 16, as they were an Xavier Legette grab away from costing some schmuck $3.2 million. When you look around and you say to yourself, okay, this is fun. And I was watching this game, not with the fact that this guy needed to, these guys need to come out and cost a guy $3 million. But I just think the arrogance and the cockiness to go out here and bet $3 million. I tell you, somebody needs to check on this guy and make sure that he's still breathing. Because I can tell you right now, if that would have been me, and I heard the way the announcer called that, oh boy, I would have been losing it. I would have been straight losing if I would have known. Because you look at it, there was nobody within reach. Now, as I said, if you guys know, I am a Carolina Panther fan, and you guys know about my show. I said at the end of it, if Bryce doesn't lead him so much, ooh, I will say Legette should have caught it, but Bryce could have helped him out a little bit more. So it was a combination of both. So I'm not going to give all the heat to Legette. But truth be known, this is a major bullet that they dodged. And it was a rather entertaining game. But I'm sure that there were a lot of you that heard about the whole A.J. Brown saying that the passing game is the problem. But let's call it what it is. You can't just sit and say that it's all on the wheels of Jalen Hurts. Maybe there's issues within, the receiver room. Who knows? But Bryce Young outdueled Jalen Hurts. 19 of 34, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked once. Now, I might add you, that was the first interception Bryce has thrown in 3 games. And it was 24 passes, I think it was. Hurts had 2 touchdown passes and 4 sacks. Well, sacked 4 times. Impressive for the Panthers, because Panthers one of the bottom teams when it comes to sacks. But over the last 4 games, they've been able to find some kind of pressure here lately. Saquon being Saquon, 20 carries, 124 yards. And Chuba Hubbard, surprisingly, against this stingy Eagles defense, had 92 yards and a touchdown on the day. on some side news, the Carolina Panthers lost their rookie running back, Jonathan Brooks, to an ACL tear in the same knee that he just had surgically repaired. So our thoughts and prayers go out to him. Hopefully this is not an ongoing thing. But as I said, this was the same surgically repaired knee that he had done back in December or November of last year. So our thoughts and prayers go with him, and we hope he has a speedy recovery. But then we go around and we look at the Ageless Wonder Part 2 in Adam Thielen, who had 9 grabs for 102 yards. Once again, just using his savvy and his ability to manipulate defenders and get where he wants to go, as he always does. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, 4 catches apiece, 43s, 37 yards, and a score respectively. Really the story of this game, in my opinion, was the Panthers' inability to turn over the Eagles. This game was turnover free until that overthrow by Bryce Young to Adam Thielen. But when you look at how this Carolina Panther team came out and how they were willing to come out and do the things that they needed to do, the one thing I saw out of Dave Canellis was he did something that I think a lot of teams going to start to emulate. Is they instituted a second lineman, and they, instead of a tight end on the end, they put another guard on the outside. And that's how they were able to get some running room. Might not have been a lot, but it was enough. So looking here, and you're talking about the issues that the Philadelphia Eagles running game, their passing game is having. That's a good thing to have when you're A.J. Brown and you're Devontae Smith, because you know you're going to eventually get it back on track. Now, I remember hearing one of the guys on the telecast say, do they think this is going to be an issue heading in as far as what's going on when it relates to last season? And the question I simply put as, I don't think so. I think as long as they can run the football, and even with the Panthers being close. Now, I will say this. If teams are willing to give away some things to Saquon, will it get this way? But I think ultimately what it's going to boil down to are when teams are going to be able to do certain things. Like I said, the question I have is, are the Eagles going to finally get burned by their lack of being able to throw the football? We're not seeing the same Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is having some issues, in my opinion, and I'm not sure what they are. Nakobe Dean had 12 total tackles. Zach Braun had a sack to add, as that was the only sack that they had of Bryce Young, who's doing a phenomenal job manipulating the pocket since he's returned. The Panthers had 4 sacks, as I alluded to earlier, of Jalen Hurts, and they've just really become a defense that has kind of gotten it figured out, led by Josie Jewell and Ashawn Robinson, who's really turned it up a notch over the last couple of weeks. As I said, you've got Xavier Legette, who, if he makes this grab, that's going to be probably the game. But once again, I'm very impressed. Tommy Tremble added the only passing touchdown. He added the passing touchdown from Bryce Young. It's a well-designed play. And as I said, I'm really becoming more impressed with the play calling of Dave Canellis. You're really starting to see him shine as a play caller, and really starting to, it seems more like Canellis is really engaged with working with Bryce on bringing this offense out of what is in his head. He's really becoming the type of play caller, and Bryce Young is becoming his quarterback. And this looks like a totally different attitude than it was 6 weeks ago. But nevertheless, the Panthers fall to 3-10. The Eagles go to 11-2. And the Eagles, for all intents and purposes, save one of their own, $3.2 million. Steelers 27, Browns 14. Wasn't quite the rematch that we saw on that Thursday night. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, that thing was so entertaining. It was so much fun to watch. And believe it or not, it was a game that while I was out there getting my workout in, I was just absolutely loving listening to. But you can look at the entire statistical makeup of this game, and you could tell this game was going to be totally different. Jameis Winston had 2 interceptions to go along with his 2 touchdowns, so this was a totally different feel for it. And Winston had 3 sacks in this game, and they did not allow, them being the Steelers, did not allow Myles Garrett to disrupt this game, although he did get a sack, which was the lone one of Russell Wilson. Meanwhile, like I said, Winston had 3 sacks, and Cameron Hayward and Alex Highsmith, who returned for this game, had a sack. Hayward had 2 sacks on the day. The Steelers knew going in that they had to neutralize Myles Garrett because regardless of how close this game was, they knew that he was the X factor in this game. If they could control him, as I said, look here, you've got a team that basically did not have much of a pass rush, so you're able to give Russell Wilson what he needed to do, which wasn't very much. 158, they didn't get much on the ground. They got 53 yards. Najee did have a score. But then once again, we're still looking at this team. 41 times they threw the football. Nick Chubb had a 48 yards on 11 carries. Here's the problem I got with that. Cleveland, you run the football. When are you going to get back to that? I get it. Believe me, I get it. But at some point, you have to get back to trying to get to your identity. And right now, you're not doing that. You're not at your identity. You're not doing what you normally do to be successful. And at some point, you have to get back to running the football. That's when Cleveland was at its best, and they had Nick Chubb. And I believe this whole Kareem Hunt mess, you should have hung on to Kareem Hunt. Don't know what move that was.
Bruh.
But looking at this game, it really wasn't the fun game you expect. Jameis still using Njoku and Judy effectively and efficiently, more than the other guys on the field. So the Browns are going to have some things to look at the end of the season. That's all there is to it. And Steelers go to 10-3. Browns continue to sit in the cellar at 3-10. Buccaneers 28, Raiders 13. Looking at this game, I really did not see, and this is what's really hard to fathom. I never saw this Raiders team really as a threat to the Bucs. It really looked like they were lulling them to sleep. And honestly, when you look at where this team was going, I really don't know how much they've got in the tank as far as being able to win another game. I think ultimately what's got to happen is they might as well just throw in the towel and see what they're going to be able to do as far as keeping it Aiden O'Connell. If it were up to me, yeah, I'd swallow that pick and see if I couldn't get Cam Ward. But let's go into the game. McCormick had 78 yards on the ground. Gosh, we don't even know who their running backs are. Boy, the Raiders need a lot. They really do. Baker went 295, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That was a huge plus there, is that you had this turnover this turnover type night, but you weren't able to really accomplish anything. Rachaad White had over 90 yards running the football. And Baker, of course, lost the fumble. So the Raiders had their opportunities. And that's what really gets you as a coach, is you have your opportunities, but what comes of them? And looking, at the place here, the Buccaneers gave the Raiders 3 turnovers. And then the Raiders turned right back around and they returned the favor. And then you look at the numbers, and the Buccaneers were able to outgain them by over 140 yards and outran them by over 60 yards. And what's really tough is Antonio Pierce's guys doing what they're supposed to do on the defensive side. They're just not covering it up offensively. And it's becoming a situation really fast that you're just, I don't know. I'm not on this whole, you know. But on a bright spot, Trevon Moehrig and Clavon Chasen had a half a sack. Adam Butler added a sack, as well as Amari Burney. And Max Crosby was kept pretty much in check, although he did have a tackle for a loss. Then we look at Levante David, who had a sack and 7 tackles. Kayvon Merriweather had a sack to go with his 7 tackles. And as I said, Pierce is building something with his defense. I know it doesn't seem like it, but the offense has to help him out. You guys get 3 turnovers. You got to be able to convert those into points, not turnovers. As I said, Aiden O'Connell got knocked out of this game. He had an interception. Desmond Ridder came in, 12 of 18, 101. So, yeah, this was anything but what you wanted to see. But, like I said, Raider Nation finally got the ball to Michael Mayer. 7 catches, 68 yards. Do that more often. Even though Bowers only had 3 grabs for 49, you get Mayer involved, guess what? It's going to help you. Raiders fall to 2-11. Buccaneers improve to 7-6 and take over sole possession of first place in the NFC South. As the Seahawks now are riding a pretty impressive winning streak of 4. And they've got an impressive game coming up this week. But they had to take care of business to start with their rival, the Arizona Cardinals, whom at the moment was looking as though they were going to be snipping at their heels for that NFC West title. But as it looks right now, Seattle has snuck back in there, and they're one of those teams that you better look out for. You know, earlier this week I was talking about how impressive Kyler Murray was looking. Now all of a sudden, he had 2 interceptions in this game. And now you've got to start to wonder, is he becoming reckless Kyler again? Connor had 90 yards rushing, and then probably the big surprise was a guy that we had totally forgotten about in Seattle's backfield, Zach Charbonnet. 22 carries, 134 yards. A weakness that we forgot about with the Arizona defense, rushing defense. And ultimately, when you look at the Arizona Cardinals and what they and a lot of teams they struggle with, is stopping the run. And this ain't just the Cardinals. This is some of every team in the National Football League. You find a team that can stop the run, you need to find an alternative. But when you got a team that can't stop the run, you need to run it. And that's what a lot of teams struggle with. They don't realize that, hey, this goes all the way back to Little League. That's the first thing you want to do, is you want to teach guys how to block and get you a guy that's the fastest guy on the field and get him to run the football. Yeah, that's what you want. Jackson Smith-Njigba just continues to impress at 5 grabs, 82 yards, and a touchdown. DK Metcalf, 4 for 49. Charbonnet also had 59 yards out of the backfield. I am just still impressed with the way he is continuing to do his thing. Him being Geno Smith to Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's really starting to look like that number 1 that the Seattle Seahawks were getting when they drafted him out of Ohio State. Trey McBride is still doing what he does. Marvin Harrison was quiet yet again. I think ultimately what the Cardinals are going to have to do, Kyler's got to cut down on the mistakes. And ultimately, that's what's costing them right now. Budda Baker had 18 tackles. Then you see Kazir White had 13 tackles. Tyrese Knight had 12 tackles. Rashawn Jenkins added a sack along with Jonathan Hankins. But looking at this Seattle team, they are just they're hot. Ain't no other word for it. They're hot. And they go to 8-5, and they are in sole position in first place in the NFC West as the Cardinals drop to 6-7. Rams 44, Bills 42. Now, there are a lot of people that are surprised, including myself. I was surprised by the fact that the Rams have been up and down all season. And right now, they've all of a sudden given the Seattle Seahawks a scare. And they're back in it. Oh, by the way, just throw you in there, the Seattle Seahawks have the Green Bay Packers next week. That's going to be a fun one. But looking at the way the Rams are sneaking up behind the Seattle Seahawks and finally looking like the team that everybody, other than myself, looked at how they were, they've got a really favorable schedule. And if Seattle can fall, they'll both be in a statistical tie for first place with that final game, ironically, in the last week of the season. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This would be a huge game. This would be one of those games that's going to be on TV. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But looking at this game, the Buffalo Bills are going to blame themselves. Sean McDermott is going to blame himself. 44-42 was the final. As I'll get into the last play, and a lot of people, including, I don't remember, was it Troy Aikman that said it? Why would you take a timeout? My first question is, why would you quarterback sneak it up the middle in the first place? Because the reality of it is, you don't have to do that in the first place. You could have just backed up, ran the ball to the outside, and then threw it if you couldn't get the corner. Instead, you use that timeout, and then instead of being able to call all three timeouts and you left with like 40 seconds left on the clock, a high 40, like 48, 49 seconds left, you get the ball back and got to kick an onside kick. So you could have called timeout. You could have scored your touchdown, called timeout, timeout, timeout. You get the ball back. I like Sean McDermott because he's a good coach, but he muffed the pup on that one. He muffed it bad. I remember when I saw it, I didn't even need Troy Aikman to say anything. I was like, what is he doing? Why'd you do that? The first problem I had is, why would you call a quarterback sneak? Stafford once again did one of his special guest appearances because he hasn't been great all year. He's had some games where he's shown up, and then he's had some games where he's been really good. 23 of 30, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kyron Williams, once again, you really got to like the way Sean McVay is mixing things up. Yeah, right there with the balance. 87 yards on the ground with Kyron Williams, 2 touchdowns. And then you look at nothing going running the football for Buffalo. And I said it. If Buffalo's going to win these games, they're going to have to get back to running the football. They ain't doing it. Buffalo is continuously trying to make Josh Allen Superman still. And it's causing problems. And the reason why it's causing problems is because you have no flow to your offense. Look, when Buffalo got out to this 10-2 mark, they were running the football. They weren't just having Josh Allen throw it all over the yard like this. And I remember when everybody was talking, this is they're good because they're spreading it out. They're doing what they do. Well, don't we need to take a step back and go back to this? I'm just calling it what I see. I think ultimately that is what they need to do. I mean, Allen's playing well. He had 6 touchdowns in a game. These are Madden numbers. But you didn't win. Doesn't matter how many touchdowns you score if you don't win. The whole point is to do what? Win. Puka Nacua, 12 grabs, 162 and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, 5 grabs, 92 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir, 5 grabs, 106 and 1. Amari Cooper, 6 grabs, 95 yards. Mac Hollins and Ty Johnson both had touchdown catches. Taylor Rapp had 13 total tackles. Damar Hamlin, 13 tackles. And no sacks of Matt Stafford. As well as the Rams had no sacks of Josh Allen. Now, I will go through this again. And the truth of the matter is, Buffalo, if they're going to be a powerhouse in the AFC, they're going to have to run the football. That's what made them strong to start the season. Running the ball. The Rams go to 7-6 and are one game behind the division-leading Seahawks as the Bills drop to 10-3, well in front. But the Dolphins are surging. 49ers 38, Bears 13. Now you can have your opinions on whether or not the 49ers should shut this thing down, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you my opinion on it. Because the fact of the matter is, this is a football team that is not going to be what it needs to be without Christian McCaffrey. They're just not. And I know what people are going to say. It's not in player's nature to shut it down. Well, you better put it in their nature. I'm just keeping it perspective. You better put it in their nature. Because whether you like it or not, whether you, me, or anybody else likes it or not, 49ers are not going to be Super Bowl material this year. And then you look at this game, there was really not much to talk about. As we looked at the 49ers just absolute dominate the newly interim coaching by the Bears, just not really showing any difference. Sorry, Thomas Brown. But Caleb Williams was 17 of 23, 134, 2 touchdowns. Running game was non-existent, 38 yards by DeAndre Swift. Brock Purdy, 325, 2 scores. Isaac Guerrero had 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Taylor, 7 for 25 and a score. George Kittle, 6 grabs, 151. Monster game for him. Juwan Jennings, 7 grabs, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. Debo quiet, and everybody else for the Bears from DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, all combined for 13 grabs for 121 yards. Caleb Williams had a lost fumble in this game. And the Bears just don't look good. Brock Purdy, on the other hand, 20 of 25, 325 yards, 2 scores. And as I said, the 49ers look like, yeah. And, of course, Caleb was sacked 7 times. So, along with that, the offensive line is continually not looking good. Edo Gross-Matos, 3 sacks. Panther fans definitely remember that guy. 3 sacks. Leonard Floyd, hometown guy. Gab out to you, Floyd. Glad gab out. I said when I previewed this game, he was going to give them problems. I said the same thing about Matos. Yeah, he looked good. Malik Collins had a sack. As I said, between Matos and Floyd, they had 5 of the 7 sacks. But 49ers go to 6-7. Bears fall to 4-9 as the regime change may need to be completed with Ryan Poles. And now the doink for the division game. The Chiefs 19, Chargers 17. As once again, this is one of those games that you look up at the scoreboard. If you're anybody that's going up against the Chiefs and you say, we had this game. Mahomes was 24 of 37, 210 yards and a touchdown. He was sacked 3 times. But then you look and you look at this game and you say you did everything right if you're the Chargers. With the exception of not finishing the game. And that's not being funny because you look at statistically, this was a game that you had. This was not a game that you... this is a game where if you're the Chargers, you win this game. It's numerically, the score is exactly where you want it. Yeah, I mean, this is not a game that you look at and you say you would lose. You know, if you look at this and you say, okay, the Chiefs scored 19 points and they're going to win.
Dumb shit! Dumb shit!
Yeah, seriously. And there's nothing on here that shows me that the Chargers should have lost this football game. This was a game that was well within the realm of victory for the Los Angeles Chargers. 20 for 20, which was the first downs. Let's go to look at Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. You've got total plays. The Chiefs ran more. You look at the third down efficiency. KC was more efficient on third down, 8 of 15. Then you look at total drives. Both of you had that. Total yards. Chiefs had you by 10. Then you look at rushing yards. Chiefs outrushed you by 2 yards. That's a huge loss if you're the Chargers because that's what you want to do. Despite the fact you don't have J.K. Dobbins. I will admit that. But then you back up and you look at the passing yards. Pretty much even 8 yards. But this is Justin Herbert we're looking at. But then you look at the turnover battle. Even. Time of possession was the only one of these that you won, and that was close. It just became a situation of you didn't get it done. I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, duh, yeah. The Chiefs have suffered a lot this season when it comes to getting it done in the red zone. And we look here, they were 1 for 3 in the red zone, whereas the Chargers were 2 out of 3. See, this is why it's so crucial when you play. Even if you win every opportunity when you're playing against a superior team, you always have to execute. And they did not. You have to be perfect. You have to be flawless until you get over that hump. And they were not, and it showed. And it showed. And it showed. But the Chiefs go to 12-1 and have a firm grip on the West, as they referred to it as the doinked clinch. With that kick, they clinched the West and their spot in the playoffs, which they already did. But now they've clinched the division. Chargers are 8-5. So the Chiefs could very well go and do what they want. But I think the Chiefs are, as long as the Buffalo Bills are around, they're going to try their most to wrap up home field. So that gives them a pretty much a 1-game lead because the Buffalo Bills hold the tiebreaker. So the remaining part of their schedule, and them being the Chiefs, they've got Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, and Denver. Don't sneeze on Cleveland with Myles Garrett, with this offensive line not being as efficient as they've been vulnerable. And Rex Ryan is absolutely right that they're their most vulnerable. And yeah, I'm just going to say it. Would not shock me if they lost the next 4 games, starting with this game this weekend. Yeah. But that's going to do it for us, you guys. Make sure you go to my Facebook, or make sure you go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo, find out what we got going on, as well as go comment down below. If you listen, guys, if you subscribe to the show, make sure you hit that bell so you can get all the notifications when you do subscribe, as well as put your name down in the comments. And if there's comments that you want to leave down there, please do so. That's the whole point. It's about conversation. If there's some topic that you would like for me to add onto the show, please do. As you already know, I am a Carolina Panther guy, and I'm also an avid fan of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, if you guys have another team you want me to do some more detailed stuff on, I will gladly do so. Also, go out and check the Facebook page out, Gridiron Gab Pro Style. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here. An army that has the will to challenge and the will to dare.